Hi, everybody. This is Jonathan from Nimonik, and I think we're just about ready to get started. I see a few people are still logging into the system, so we'll give them a couple of minutes. But just, I guess, a few housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar is being recorded, so if you've registered for the webinar, you'll receive a copy of this recording in about 24 hours, and you're welcome to share that with your colleagues. If you have any questions during the webinar, please put those over into the questions panel within the GoToWebinar software, and we'll address those questions throughout the webinar or towards the end of the webinar, depending on the questions. And we do want this webinar to be interactive, so feel free to jump in with questions, comments. We want this to be as helpful as possible. I guess another small note about this webinar is it is geared a little bit more towards standards publishers than towards the general audience. I think everybody, the end user who needs standards, who needs regulatory data will benefit from this webinar, but we're going to put a little bit more emphasis on the functionality that is going to be adding value to standards. So with that being said, we're keen to get started on time, and what I will do is just move over this onto the screen, and we should be all set. So what we want to talk about today are standards, regulations, compliance, and a little bit about Nimonik. So what Nimonik offers is a global standards and regulatory compliance software. So we bring together standards and regulations, and fundamentally what we're doing is we're helping companies organize and control the requirements they have. These can be for products that they're producing, for projects that they're engaged in, or for day-to-day operations at their facilities and locations around the world. So we'll have a very short presentation at the beginning of today's webinar, and then we'll hop right over to a demonstration. We want this to be interactive, so please do jump in with any questions, comments, or anything we can show you today. So I want to make sure I'm sharing the right screen. I believe so. So we're going to have a small introduction about the company, follow up with a demonstration, and then, of course, questions and answers for as much as folks want. A little bit about Nimonik. So Nimonik is a company headquartered in Montreal, Canada. We have about 50 staff globally. We have offices now in California, in Calgary, Toronto, and Shanghai, China. We also have partners throughout the world, both in the Europe, Middle East, Latin America, Australia, and we have customers that have locations all around the world. We have some sample customers here on the right-hand side. And though the customers on the right-hand side are some of the more famous, well-known companies, I would say that in general, we tend to focus on mid-sized companies who have between 500 and 30,000 staff. These are the companies that need turnkey solutions that are cost-effective, and we think Nimonik can deliver on that front. We have about 800 companies around the world that are subscribed to our service for regulatory data or standards, and we're looking to add many more in the years to come. So in summary, what we're trying to do at Nimonik and what we've been working on for the last 16 years, it goes fast, is bringing together regulations, standards, and company documents. So we want all of our customers to put in all their requirements in a single location rather than having them spread out over different systems, email, Excel, and other items. So we want get all your requirements in one place, manage them properly, and then dispatch the relevant tasks and information to the right people. So we started with regulations, building up a large database of regulations, both here in Canada originally, but now we've expanded. We cover about 40 countries, and we have about 450 jurisdictions for regulatory data. So that's states or provinces in different countries. And as many folks on this call will know, many regulations reference standards, or standards are incorporated by reference. And we've always wanted to offer standards directly to our customers rather than redirecting them to various sources to purchase their standards. And so that's what we've been working on for the last few months, and we're excited to share some updates with you today. We also allow our customers to upload their own corporate documents. So whether these are permits they've received, engineering documents, contracts, stakeholders, engagements, any document that contains a set of requirements, they can load that into the system. And again, the idea is get all your requirements in one place. So our goal at Nimonik is to add value to standards and regulations. We want to make it easier for companies to manage and conform to standards and regulations. These are documents that are often very technical, complex, and they're also changing on a very frequent basis. And I would say most companies that we've interacted with over the last 16 years, nobody's really mastered this. It's a big challenge for many organizations. And I don't want to pretend that Nimonik has the solution, but it's something that we're working towards as a long-term goal, and we think we've made some progress. So how do we do this? The workflow within the software, we try to keep it fairly simple. The first step is to identify the documents that a company needs or that a project needs, and these will be regulations, standards, and then their own internal corporate documents. And that's often where some of the traditional players will stop. They'll say, okay, well, here are all the documents you need to comply with. Go on your way and good luck. But we think there's a lot more work that needs to be done. And so the next few steps we do is to locate the requirements within these documents. So for regulations and for corporate documents, we use artificial intelligence and software that we've built to pinpoint the specific requirements within the documents that a company needs to comply with. And we're hoping to do this with standards in the future, and we're working with a number of SDOs to be able to offer this soon. But for now, regulations and corporate documents, we can identify the requirements. And then from there, you can link up those requirements. So you can connect them back to engineering documents, back to risk analysis, back to controls, and basically demonstrate how are you staying in compliance on an ongoing basis with either a requirement that's in a regulation, a standard, or your own corporate documents. So once you've done that mapping, you can then start to create actions. So these actions can be to file reports, they can be to do tests, they can be to update documents or training. And these actions, of course, can be issued to various people, they can issue to teams, and there's emails and alerts and reporting that's available. So the action is a critical part of keeping this train moving, if you will, this compliance train moving. And then last but certainly not least, once you've done this work, you've organized your information, basically, you can take relevant piece of information. Again, it could be a regulation, a standard, or corporate document, and you can turn that into a checklist. And that checklist can be used to do an internal inspection of a project, a piece, a supplier, and all the data gets rolled back up into the same location. So it's this general concept of get all your requirements in one place, link them up to your systems, and then periodically check to make sure that your systems are in compliance. So to help us on this journey, and as I mentioned earlier, we started with regulations, and regulations reference a lot of standards, but the standards, generally speaking, you have to purchase a copy of the standard. They've been developed by standards publishers and are, of course, copyright protected. So to accelerate our journey to offering a single place to manage requirements, we acquired a company in California on January 1st of this year. The company is called Document Center, and they've been selling standards since 1982. It sounds kind of crazy, but they started way back in 1982 selling mostly military standards, and over the years grew and worked with many different standards publishers throughout the United States and overseas. And so the entire team at Document Center has joined Nimonik, and they're bringing with them not just the relationships with all these standards publishers, but a deep expertise on how standards are published, how they're promoted, the various restrictions around copyright. And so that expertise is being transferred into Nimonik, and we're also leveraging this to go and offer additional standards from other bodies. And our goal is to offer as many standards as we possibly can through the tool that we're going to be showing today. So just a little bit about the timeline, and then we're going to hop over to the demonstration. So the timeline, we announced this acquisition of Document Center in January of 2024, so about 5 months ago. It's been a really fast transition. We started working right away on transitioning their customers. They had a subscription platform where they were delivering the standards. So we started right away moving them over to the Nimonik platform. And we're really happy to announce that that was completed ahead of schedule. So it was originally targeting the end of May, and we did that transition at the end of April. So our teams have been working just full speed ahead on that. And so now all of Document Center's customers that were subscribed to standards are getting their standards through the Nimonik platform. This summer, we're going to be relaunching the Document Center store for print and PDF copies of the standards. The store that's currently online was built a number of years ago, and so we're completely revamping. It'll be a brand new store, very modern interface, lots of great features, allowing you to monitor for changes to standards, allowing you to purchase them really quickly. I won't go through all the feature list there, but expect to see that store online this summer. And then probably next year, we're going to slowly move away from the Document Center brand and then just fully consolidate into Nimonik. So going forward, you can consider us just Nimonik, and the Document Center customers, the team, the people, the expertise are all being rolled into Nimonik. And as we're doing this, we're also growing our relationships with new publishers, and we're hoping to add more publishers throughout this year and going forward into next year and the following years. And so I'd say in about a year and a half, we hope to be able to offer a really comprehensive solution to most businesses who want to have all the standards they need and all the regulations with workflow tools to manage the data. So this is our transition. We're working really hard to make this happen. And if you have any questions about this, please feel free to let us know. So that's a little bit of an introduction about Nimonik, our journey from regulations to standards and general compliance workflow tools. What we're going to do now is a few demonstrations of the product, and we do want this to be interactive, so feel free to jump in with questions. The first thing I'll show you is really the basic stuff. This is what you would see with a typical aggregator, where you can access your standards via a library or via a specific site. We call them registers. You can view the standard in PDF, and for certain standards, you can view them in XML. So let me just show you this first very basic demonstration, and then we'll get on to some more sophisticated items. So let me load this up. So I'm gonna probably have to log back in here. Yeah, 1 second. I'm just gonna log back into our demonstration account. And again, feel free to put in questions or comments that you might have here. I won't start by showing everything, but the basic core, I've logged into a demonstration account and we have different facilities. You could think of these as projects or folders. So for each facility, you have an auditing module, which we'll talk about in a moment, facility equipment, and then the registers where we're going to store the documents that apply to this project or this location. So there's two ways you can access your standards. One is generally through the compliance library. So I come to the library at the top of the screen here, and I click on Nimonik Library. This is the gigantic database of standards, regulations, and corporate documents. So it's your library of documents that contain requirements or that help you understand what you need to do to stay in compliance for a project or a product. So you can search for a document. You can filter by jurisdiction, so the location, if it's, say, a regulation that's specific to US. Industrial sectors, document types, so whether it's a standard, whether it's a piece of law, or whether it's a corporate document that's been uploaded. You can filter by topic, so we have a variety of different topics ranging from environment to quality to safety to other items. You can filter for status, so is the document still in force, who published it, so we can look up ISO documents as an example here, and you can look for the most essential documents. So let me just go find a very simple example, which is ISO 9001. So I'm going to search here, and this should bring it up in my location, not my location, in the library. So I can just simply click on this ISO 9001 document. Again, this is really the basic functionality you would find in an aggregator. So you have the document here with an abstract, a record of all the changes, the superseded versions. And then if you want to see the document itself, so in this case, it's already been unlocked for this account, I simply click on the PDF viewer, and it's going to take me to a PDF view of the document. Nothing terribly exciting, but it's an easy way to access the document for your location. You also have the ability to track it in a register. So that's where you can add documents to a specific location and then track them and determine how they apply to you. Let me just show you really quickly an example of a standard that's been available in an XML format. So we're going to go here. I'm going to look up ASTM, and I should have noted this. Let me go and find in our register. So I'm going to come back to sorry, I forgot the name of the ASTM standard that I had set up, but let me go back to here. So we're on the home page. I'm going to show you how to access the standard through a register. So if I scroll down, I want to select, sorry, let me select it. So I'm going to go facilities on the top of the screen and click on registers. And I'm just going to find my register. I have many registers, so some are related to standards and some are related to regulations. But I'll click on this register here that has a bunch of standards in it. So what these registers allow you to do is they allow you to build lists of documents that are of interest to a site, a project, or a product. You don't need to purchase all of these documents. So even if you haven't purchased NFPA 13, we do allow you to add that to your register, and then you receive alerts when that changes. You can also indicate if you want to track it for changes, the status of the document, and you can enter assessment notes, who's responsible for it, action items, notes, and other fields. And I'll show that to you in a moment. But let me just show you what an XML version of a standard looks like. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom here and find this ASTM standard. So I have ASTM E11920. And so here we have it in my register, and we see that it has 48 requirements. And I can click on this, and this will take me into the standard, but in that XML view. So here I have it cut up into all the individual provisions, and you have this same ability to track it for changes, assess it, etc. And so we can only offer this for certain standards, but for the regulations, we offer this for hundreds of thousands of regulations around the world. And this allows you to take the standard and kind of make it your own, personalize it, link it back to your operations, issue action items, so on and so forth. But this is the XML version of the standard, and for the SDOs that allow us to, we're happy to provide that to our customers. So let me just go back to the presentation here. I want to show you so that's the first part of the demonstration. It's really basic. It's you go to the library, you go to the register, you can access the standard in PDF, and then for certain standards, you can access them in XML, more dynamic format. So the second part of the demonstration will show something a little bit more sophisticated. We're going to go and look for a regulation in our database. Within that regulation, we should be able to see some standards that are referenced. We're going to click through and see those standards, and then we can do the same identification of requirements, and we can start an audit or an inspection against the standard. So let's do this. I'm going to go back to the screen here. Let's go back to my library. So here I'm just going to search for LNG, LHG, so liquid natural gas and liquefied handling of gas at ports. I see that LNG and LHG are mentioned in this subpart of the US CFR. So I'm going to click on this. Now I could look at the specific requirements within this part of the regulation. So to do that, I would click on C20 obligations, and this gives me that cut up a version of the standard, not the standard, cut up version of the regulation or the part of the CFR. And so here you see some specific requirements for an LNG or an LHG terminal. And you can do the same assessment that I just showed you with the standard, but here it's done with a part of the CFR. So I'm going to go back. You have an abstract. What does this part of the CFR apply to? History of all the changes. And if I scroll down, I have the text of the actual regulation. And in this specific regulation, it references a number of standards. You can see some from ASME, some from ASTM, DNV, etc. So for the standards that we have the ability to provide a copy of the standard, again, if the customer purchases it, we will link back to the standards. So here we have the same ASTM that I was showing you earlier, but instead of accessing it directly, here we're going to access it through the regulation. So I simply click on it, and it takes me to the standard. It's the same thing we were looking at earlier. We have an abstract, a description. Lower down, we'll have the historical records of all the standards, or sorry, all the versions, revisions of this standard. And this version that we're looking at is the version that was cited in the regulation. It's actually not the current version, it's the superseded version, but that's what's in that part of the CFR. And you can see those obligations, or you can track it in the register. So if you want to track this, we could do that. I would click here. You select the register where you want to add it or the list. It's already in that register I showed you earlier, so I'm going to click on it. It's going to take me back to that register, so I'm just doing a bit of a full circle here. So we scroll down, and let me just take a bit longer to show you the ability that you have to mark it up. So here it is, the standard we were just looking at. We have this abstract that's provided, in this case, by the SDOs for regulations, because generally speaking, abstracts aren't provided. We create that abstract using some AI, but for the standards, we use the SDOs abstract. So here you can indicate your compliance assessment. Now you can do this for the whole standard or for the individual provisions. It's the same workflow and methodology, but here we can come in and we can click, yep, this applies to us. We can say we are building a new LNG terminal. We need to review this standard. And when you save these notes, the date, the time, and the person that saves them gets stored in your assessment history right here. So I can click here and you see the assessment history. And the idea is that you're basically building a paper trail of all of your compliance efforts over time. You can indicate who's responsible for this specific standard. So in this case, it's me, but if we want to change this, I can come in and you can select a person or you can select a team. Let's say you wanted the environmental team to be responsible. They'll get an email alert. And if this standard is revised or if changes happen to it, they will get email alerts. I'm going to scroll over to the right-hand side and show you some of these extra columns. So this is very much like Excel. You can add and remove columns for the way you want to manage your requirements. Let me just check the questions panel here. So there's a question here, which I think we can address to a certain extent from Olivia. She's asking if there's a way to mark up or comment on the PDFs, put in your own notes and comments. So right now, no. The way we've designed it is to kind of move a little bit away from the PDF and to instead add your notes and comments in these registers or at the individual provision level, the XML version. The advantage of that is it allows us to link the data together in a much kind of cleaner way rather than leaving notes within a PDF and then you're always kind of stuck with the PDF. And so what we prefer whenever possible is to break up that PDF into these XML versions, and then you put in your notes and comments as I'm doing now in the register. That's not to say that we won't do PDF markup in the future. We understand that some people really like that, but we're working towards something that's much more interactive. So the assessment history is the record of all the reviews you've done to this document. Internal actions, so let's say you want to issue an action to review the standard in more detail. You could do that here. So you could say conduct deep analysis on this standard and our conformance, and I apologize for the typos. So you can put in notes, you can put in tags and say, okay, this is going to be related to emergency management. So it'll allow you to create some reports later on. You can set due dates. You can indicate who's responsible for this action. Let's say it's going to be Dave. And in some situations, you might want to have an action repeat. Like let's say you want to file a report every year, or you want to conduct a certain test every year using a standard. You can have this repeat and say, we're going to have this repeat every year. And you simply click on save and that creates that action item. It's going to be sent out to Dave. He's going to get reminders and then you can track in the system, was the action completed? What notes did they leave in the system, etc. So that's the action module. Then all of these columns on the right-hand side where you see notes, publishing authority, risk, control measures, etc. Those are all columns you can add and remove. So depending how you want to mark up these documents, if you want to do a risk analysis, you can use our risk calculator and you can customize that. So let's say we want to change the risk on this document from 19. I'm going to click here and this will give me a risk matrix that, again, you can personalize this based on the way your company analyzes risk. So we can say, if we interact with this standard 4 times a year, and if there's a non-compliance, it could lead to over $1 million in delays, penalties, and fines. And that will increase my risk ranking from 19 to 21. You can then link in documents. So here we can create a link to a document. You can also upload documents. You can indicate an expert about this standard. So in this case, we've indicated that Adrian is the expert, but it could also be a team. Evidence of compliance, you can upload documents and you can add and drop columns and remove them as you see fit. So this is, here we did this analysis for the overall standard, but if you want to do it for the individual provisions within the standard, you would simply click on this 48. It would take you into the ASTM E11920, and you have pretty much the same workflow, except instead of doing it for the whole standard, here you're doing it for these individual provisions. So you can say, shall register comparative performance, specific fire testing. We can come in and say conforming, and you can leave your notes and comments. Was done by our certification body. And the date, the time, and the person that enters these notes gets stored in that assessment history. Again, a lot of this is about creating a paper trail that you're actively trying to stay in compliance or conformance with standards, regulations, and your corporate documents. So I would say this is somewhat almost the end of part 2 of the demonstration. Let's go back to the register, and I want to show you how to create an audit. So let's say you have cleaned up your data within a number of documents or specific standards. It could also be regulations. Let me scroll down to that standard that we were looking at earlier. So let's say I want to now just do a spot check inspection of my facility or my project as it relates to this specific standard. So I'm going to click on ASTM. I'm going to click on the little box on the left. I'm going to click on Create Audit. So what this allows us to do, and we can only do this for certain standards where we have the permission from the publisher, but basically you can come in, you can say, I'm going to do an inspection at my oil and gas location here in Alberta. I am going to call this demonstration ASTM inspection. Who's doing the audit or the inspection, the date. I only want to include the requirements within this standard. And here you can select the document. So I've only selected one document, but you can select as many documents as you want, and it can be a combination of regulations, standards, and company documents you've uploaded into the system. So I'm gonna click on Save, and what this will do is it will create an audit checklist or an inspection form based on this standard. And so here we have a series of questions. So let's say a test specimen shall be representative of the construction that the test is intended to assess, et cetera, et cetera. And so here you can come in and you can indicate your notes. Similar to a register, the main difference here is the inspection or the audit is really a point in time picture of your compliance or conformance today, compared to the register. And the register is more of a living document that you're constantly keeping up to date as things change, as your operations change, as the standards change, as the regulations change. But this audit allows you to do a spot inspection. So you can do the audit on the website, as I'm showing you now. You can indicate findings, you can add documents and files, but you can also do it on the mobile device. And let me just pull up my mobile device here. Give me a second, and I will show you the mobile device. So this works on iPhone, iPad, and Android devices. So here we go. So we have our mobile device. Hopefully everybody can see my screen with the iPhone. So you have audits, audit templates, which are the checklists that you're going to be able to build, corrective actions, internal actions, and very soon, probably within a month or so, you will be able to read the standards that you purchase right on your mobile device, whether it's an iPad, an Android tablet, or a phone. You'll be able to access those standards and read them right on your mobile device. But let's say I want to go find the audit that I just started doing. I think I'm logged into the wrong account, unfortunately. But basically, if we were to take a different audit than the one we just did, you would click on it. So this is an audit based on a regulation, just as a bit of a comparison. And you can come in and you can do basically the same type of functionality that I was looking at earlier for the ASTM standard, but here we're doing it against a specific part of a regulation. Come in, you assess complying, you can snap a photo. So this photo allows you to take evidence, capture evidence of an issue. You can mark it up with a pencil. And again, the advantage of it not being in a PDF as the source material is all of this data, this evidence can now be linked back to a specific provision within a regulation, or in the case of standards, a specific provision within the standard. You can indicate findings, you can dictate your notes, and we can say, emissions have not been minimized for this location. We need to do an additional check. And that can just be quite handy in terms of taking notes on the fly as you're walking around. You can capture audio recordings and do a number of other things, but fundamentally it's a series of questions based on the requirements in documents. And those documents, I know I'm repeating myself, but it's those standards, the regulations, and the company documents. So here we see we've assessed that one. You could continue to assess more questions, and then when you're ready, you click on report, and that will issue a report in a PDF format for this specific inspection that you've done. So let me close the iPhone here, and I'm trying to give everybody a bit of a taste of what we're doing. But that's the workflow. Is we take the documents, the regs, the standards, load them into registers. Companies add their own documents. We organize them, structure them, add notes, comments, responsible people, and then periodically our customers will take that data and then turn it into inspection, do the inspection, and when they're done, they would click on complete here. They'd sign off on it. So I'll say it's Jonathan did it. And then I have the ability to issue a report. And so this report will just be a report of this specific inspection against this specific standard. It has some graphics and charts and tables and things of that nature. So let me go back. Okay, I know that's a lot of information to take in, but let me circle back to my presentation and show everybody. So that was demonstration part 2, where we searched for regulation in the database. We found it. We clicked through to a standard, the ASTM standard. We were able to see the requirements in that standard and add our notes, comments, action items, and be able to start an audit against that standard. So this is, I would say, step 2 in your compliance journey with Nimonik. And the next part of the demonstration that I want to show you is something that's still being tested. So it's not yet available for our customers, but we do expect to launch it in probably in about a month or 2 for a subset of the data. But it's a chatbot. I know everybody's talking about chatbots these days and AI, and I'm sure a lot of people on the call today have tried them. But here at Nimonik, we've been working on this for 3 to 4 years, and we're almost getting ready to release it. So it's a chatbot that allows you to interact with regulations and eventually with standards. For standards, right now what we can do is search and chat with the abstract of the standard and the titles. We can't yet search through the actual text of the standard because we have to collaborate with our SDO partners for that. But we do believe at Nimonik that chatbots or discussion is one of the main ways that humans interact with each other. We're talking to each other now. We do this all day, every day from the moment we're born. My young children, I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. The main way we interact is through speaking. And so once we can get the chatbots to be reliable, accurate, and to contain all the required information, I really do believe that this will be one of the main ways that we interact with information. And in our case, it'll be regulations, standards, and corporate documents. But it allows us to have a much more natural flow of back and forth with the data, and of course, to query very large sets of data. So let me show you a little bit what the chatbot looks like. We will be launching this probably in a month or 2. So I already preloaded a couple questions, but certainly we can ask some questions to the chatbot. So here, for example, I'm in Alberta, so we can select the jurisdiction where we want to have a discussion. And right now it's primarily querying just the regulations and laws. But here I've asked it, in Alberta, at what height must a worker secure himself or herself to a fixed point using a harness? And it gives me this response where it says, basically, if it's 3 meters or higher, 9 feet or higher about, you need to be secured with a harness. I then ask what type of fall protection system must be used, and it gives me a much more specific answer of what that fall protection system is like. And we can ask it a question here, like, are there any standards referenced as it relates to harnesses? And I haven't actually asked it this question, so I will see what it says, but I simply ask it the question, we'll see what it comes back with. But what we're realizing as we're building this chatbot is that it's really good at interacting with regulations, but often it hits a roadblock when it gets to the standards, because the standards are copyright protected and we don't have access to them. So here I asked it which standards are referenced when it relates to harnesses, and here it talks about if it's an ASSE standard, a CSA standard, etc. And so these standards are, of course, incorporated by reference. They're very important, and we would love to be able to integrate follow-up questions, which is, can you give me the specific details of these harness standards and certain variables or information we want to have, or testing methodology, and we're hoping to be able to integrate that into the tool in the future. We do view the chatbot in a few different lights. So one is getting answers to your questions. Another one is discoverability. Because you're having a discussion, it's much more dynamic, much more fluid, and we do believe that it's going to help people discover new standards or standards they weren't aware of, that they're like, oh, this standard could be really helpful for the work I do. Perhaps I should consult it, purchase a copy, and determine how it could be helpful for my organization. So we think there's a big element here of discoverability and finding new information that you weren't previously aware of. Once you found that information and when necessary purchased it, having the chatbot just give you that layer of interaction, we think is going to be super helpful for a lot of folks. And we've been putting this through its paces with some industry experts on various topics, and so far the feedback has been extremely positive. It's not perfect, but it's a lot more cost effective than hiring consultants. It's a lot faster, and it's honestly really good. So we really think this is the future, and we're excited to work with our SDO partners to offer this as a value added service for customers. We view this as a way for SDOs to generate new revenues, again, through the discoverability, but also potentially by charging for access to the chatbot. And yeah, we think this is just a very powerful technology, and it's also going to change consumer expectations. I believe that in the future, we will expect these large software systems, whether it's compliance related or other large systems, to have very powerful chatbots. And as we saw with the music industry, once consumer expectations change, it's very important that the companies in that space rapidly adapt. It's not easy, and we're here to help, but we do think consumers will come to expect chatbots to be very easily accessible and very powerful, and we're working towards that. So if anybody has a question they would like us to ask the chatbot, kindly let me know. We can chat with Canadian acts and regulations, Alberta, as well as US CFR titles 21, 29, 40, and 49. So if you have some questions that you think would fit within this, please put those into the chat here, and we will. I'm happy to put it through its paces in a live demonstration. But that's more or less the demonstration we want to give to you today. There's a lot of other bells and whistles on the platform related to reporting and dashboards and things of that nature. But the core is get all your data into one place when it comes to compliance, organize it into registers, do periodic inspections, issue actions, and then when you have questions about the data, you'll be interacting with this chatbot. And we always link back to the source material, of course, whether it's a standard or a regulation. Okay, let me take a little breather here and see what the questions are looking like. Okay, so let's go through these questions, and please pop them in as we come. So there's a question of whether or not we have access to ASME standards. Unfortunately, we do not yet have access to ASME standards. We are in discussions with them, and we hope to be able to offer ASME standards in the future, but as of today, we cannot, unfortunately. Is the platform only available in English? So the platform is available, the buttons and the interface are available in English, French, and Chinese. However, all the data, at least the regulatory data, is available in its native language. So in Germany, it's in German, and Italy, it's in Italian. And a lot of our customers will use plugins in their browser to translate some of the buttons and things like that. The chatbot also works in many languages, so you can ask your questions in various languages, especially jurisdictions where the data is not in English. So we can add other languages on a need-by-need basis. So the next question is, in previous info sessions, you mentioned a redline feature. Could you do a brief demonstration on how that works? And is the redline feature an additional cost, or is it free for all customers? Yeah, sure. So redline. So redline, we have redline for the regulations, and we're just in the process of rolling it out for the standards. So the standards are not quite ready to show you today, but let me show you the redline when it comes to regulatory data. And it's going to look very similar for standards when it's ready. Give us maybe a month or so. So when regulations change, you're going to get these external actions. So we call them external actions because they're external to your organization. They're coming from the regulators, basically. And you're gonna get two types of actions. You're gonna get actions for the whole document, because let's say the document's been amended or changed. And if you're tracking specific provisions within the document, you're gonna get these more granular, detailed updates that show you the red line for just that provision. So here I have an example of a document that's been updated at the provision level. So if I click on it, it will take me to a view where I see on the left-hand side what's been removed, and on the right-hand side, I see what's been added. So this functionality is again linked back to that XML version of the document. And we'll only be able to offer that for certain standards, but we will offer a redline version for the entire standard. So if I go back to this external actions page, I'll find you an example of a whole document that's been updated. So let me find something maybe in English. There's a few French examples here. I can't do that one. Let me just find you an example in English. That is not a standard. So we can come in here. I will click on this document. I'm going to click on the document itself. I'll show you the redline version for this document. So I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. There's a lot of changes in this document. So let's say I want to compare this version to the previous version. I would click on compare to previous version. And here it shows me the red. Red is removed, green is added. And so this is a comparison. Again, right now it's for the regulations, but in the future, near future, we'll be offering it for standards. As to your question of whether it will be an additional cost, the answer is no. So if you subscribe to standards on our platform, you will have access to a redline version of those standards as they become available. So it should be live for standards within a month or so. The next question was, what is purchasing structure to access standards? Is it a pay by file, file package, publisher? So the short answer is it depends. So it depends on the publisher primarily. Each publisher tends to have their own pricing structure. Some of them offer it per document, some have collections. There's various formulas. So the best would be to just contact us with a specific list of standards you're interested in or publishers, and we can discuss pricing in more detail because it does vary a lot across the publishers. So the next question is, are historical versions of standards always included when you purchase the access to a standard? Yes. So if you purchase a subscription to a standard or a set of standards, you get all the historical versions, the past ones and the future ones are in your account. And so you can see that within your account. If you just purchase a single PDF of a single version of the standard, then you don't get the historical. So one of the big advantages for subscription versus purchasing individual is, one, you can give access to your organization, so you can share it with your colleagues. Two, you get all the historical versions, past and future. Three, you get the red line. And then I'd say four, you have all these workflow tools that I've demonstrated today to help you manage the data. About registers, the next question is like about registers. Is there any way to import existing lists of standards? Yes, absolutely. So you give us a list of the standards that you're currently interested in, and we can import that into the system. You don't even need to purchase them necessarily with us. If you just want to track them for changes, you can do that with our system without going and purchasing all the standards. If you'd like to have access to the full standard, the full text, then of course you'll have to purchase it through our platform, and we'll provide a price, a very competitive price based on your needs and your organization. So just reach out to us with the list of standards and we'll be happy to prepare a detailed quote and on options. So the question is, what is the purchase request process for standards? And is there a purchasing request feature integrated into the software? So yes, normally you contact us with a list of the standards of the publishers that you're interested in. We'll prepare a quote and send that over to you. And then within the system itself, you can request purchasing a standard. So that's one of the great things here is when you're in the library, you're not just going to see the standards that you've purchased. You're going to see all the standards from the various publishing authorities. Let's go look up ASTM again. I'll just generate my results. So this will show me all the ASTM documents that we have in our system. We have 20 pages worth, so it's a lot. And you can see, for example, this A010824. Let's say you were interested in this standard. You have access to some of the information about it, the summary, the dates, when it was published, etc. And I can click on it, and it gives me some of the information. We can see there's a superseded version. This is the new version. And here you have a button that says contact Nimonik to unlock the document. So you simply click on this button and it's going to pop up an email. And this will just be an email. It's nothing very exciting. And you just email us and say, hey, we'd like to purchase a copy of the standard for our organization. We also have a button up here that says request standards. and that allows you to request a standard. But again, I know I'm repeating myself, but you can also track it in your registers. So let's say you don't have the budget to buy it right now, or you just want to keep an eye on it. You can add it to your register and it'll receive alerts when it changes. You can add all that commenting and notes and markup, and then only purchase the standard once you have the real need and the budget. Again, we want it to be easy to find the standards you need, to manage them, and then purchase the ones that you need to consult the full text on and share with your colleagues. Another question. In the past, this person used to receive a newsletter from another organization. And does this newsletter exist? Yes, absolutely. So this newsletter was purchased by Nimonik a few months ago, or so about a year ago. And the newsletter now sits here. So if you wanted a general update of changes to standards and regulations, there's a newsletter that's offered, and you can generate it here on the platform. It also gets emailed out to you automatically. So we could look at Canadian, or let's take a US, sorry, they're not publishing authority, but jurisdiction. So I could say I want to see all the regulatory changes that have happened at the US federal level in the last week. And I can click here on generate report. This will give me a report of all the changes at the US federal level regulations, but we could do the same thing for standards. You have them all here, new items that have been published. You can export it to a PDF file and you can download that and share it. It gets emailed automatically out to subscribers. So if you're interested in this, just send us an email with the jurisdictions and information you're interested in, and this gets sent out to you based on your subscription preferences. So here you see some updates about standards, API standards, ANSI ASHRAE standards. So these are all getting pushed out, and you can download this report in a PDF file. It gets emailed to you. So yep, that's available as a service. Please contact us. All right, lots of questions. So there's a question here. Is it possible to limit the purchase of standards to specific users rather than having all users being available to make purchases? Yes. So if we come back to this homepage, so there's kind of two pricing models for standards. One is you buy it for your entire organization, and there's a fee related to that. The other is, let's say only certain sites, locations need access to certain standards or certain business units. There is pricing that allows it to be a bit more cost effective. And so we can unlock or make a standard available for the entire company, and there's a price attached to that. Or if you say only specific locations need this standard, then to access the standard, you cannot access it through the general library. You can only access it through a specific location. And then we can restrict the users to certain locations. So when they log in, if they're restricted to the Canadian Ontario location, they're only going to see that location. And to access their standards, they go to their registers. They'll click through to the registers. They will click through to the standard. So we can restrict it in that way, and it is more cost effective. So yeah, we can do that, no problem. What's the average amount of time to receive a quote back from a publisher? I'd say 48 hours. Some publishers, we need to get the quotes validated by them. We can't just give a quote on our end, so there's a bit of a delay, but I'd say 48 hours is usually pretty complete. Another question, do we have a list of all the publishers that we have agreements with? Yes, so we can certainly provide that to you. I don't know if it merits going through it on the call, but just send us an email and we'll provide you a list of that. And how are locations determined? By office address location. Yeah, with the remote work trend, let's say, it's become a bit more challenging to price by location. But generally speaking, it's by office locations you have, or factories or facilities that you have. So we can discuss that in more detail. We just need to get into a bit of the details, but basically the offices or factories or facilities that you're looking to have access to. Okay. Any other questions about the platform? Does anybody have any questions they want me to put into the chatbot to see if they can answer something very technical? I'm happy to put it through its trials if anybody has some questions. And I guess last thing I would emphasize here is this is just the beginning, what I'm showing you today. We think that though we've been working on this for 16 years, with the addition of standards and AI and a number of other items, we think the potentials are immense to make it much easier to find information, manage information, interact with information. And so we're really excited. Well, I'm more excited today than I was 5 years ago about the possibilities of making compliance and conformance easier and more accessible for organizations all around the world. And so if you're an SDO or publisher, an NSB, we're really excited to speak with you and get a collaboration going. If you're an end user and you want to manage information in a more interactive and dynamic way, please reach out to us. We're really excited to get this going. And if you'd like early access to the chatbot, we are opening up early access to the chatbot in a couple weeks. So let us know, and we can give you an early access so you can test it before it goes live this summer. Okay, great. If there's no more questions, let me just bring up my thank you slide on the presentation here. And yeah, so I think that's all I wanted to cover today. I know it's a lot of information in just 1 hour. I really appreciate everybody taking time out of their day. If you have any follow-up questions, if you'd like a quote, if you'd like to discuss how we integrate your standards into the platform and drive some new revenue for you, please reach out to us. We're very excited, and we have folks here in Montreal, Calgary, Oakland, California, and Shanghai, and growing fairly rapidly. So thank you everybody for joining us today. A copy of this presentation and the video will go out to you. Feel free to share that. If you'd like to have an in-depth discussion with myself or one of my colleagues, please send us an email and we will arrange that at a convenient time for you. So thanks again, everybody. I really appreciate everybody's time, and I wish you all an excellent day.